gonna let it fall. Hi guys, I'm Katie of Buona Pasta Club. Welcome to my pasta making series. So today we're going to be making my basic egg dough recipe. So this is made with whole eggs, 00 flour, or any fine white flour. You can also use all-purpose. Super easy to remember, 1 serving, 1 egg. So today we're gonna make 2 servings. I'm gonna use 2 eggs, 1 cup of flour, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I am going to start with 1 cup of my 00 flour. And this flour just produces a very light and silky pasta. So now I am going to just carefully crack my eggs into my well. And we are using whole eggs, size large. All right, so now I'm just going to scramble my eggs. All right, so once it's all nice and mixed, that's when I start bringing my flour in. So now you can see it's nice and thick, and I'm not worried about it going outside of my well, so I can kind of just keep bringing that flour in. If you're in a super humid environment, you're gonna have a lot more moisture in your air, and your dough is gonna be wetter. We're just gonna keep pulling that flour in. Once the flour is all incorporated, it might not look like dough yet. That's when I'm gonna ditch the fork and start using my bench scraper, or you can start using your hands. So I'm at a good point now to start hand kneading. So I'm just going to start my hand kneading at this point with my bench scraper. If you don't have a bench scraper, you can totally do this with your hands and just start your kneading that way. But same motion with your hands as you would with your bench scraper. So you're just going under your dough and pushing it over top of itself in all different angles around your dough. So you're just gonna keep you're kind of like smushing this dough together so that it all kind of comes together and becomes one solid piece. So again, if I didn't have my bench scraper, I can just start doing that same motion with my hands. I just like to start using my bench scraper, keep my hands a bit cleaner. All right. So now I am going to switch to my hands. So your dough is gonna start looking kind of like this. It's one solid piece, but it is still a little, you know, has some pieces off of it. So I'm just going to start that kneading motion. So that kneading motion is the top over itself, and then push it with the heel of your palm down into the dough. So, and then I rotate it 45-degree angle and do the same thing and push that. And this kneading motion is activating that gluten that is in your flour, and that's what produces a flexible and pliable pasta and allows for that stretch. All right, so now you can see we're kind of in like the dough ball phase. So we actually have a solid dough. So I am going to just use my bench scraper and continue hand kneading. So it's not sticking that much, so I don't want to add too much flour. So like you can see, when it doesn't stick to your hands, you really don't need to add more flour. So I'm actually going to hold off for now. Now, if it was sticking to my palms, then I can add flour. When you add flour to your dough, if it is sticky, you want to add it just a little at a time, because a little does go a long way. And it's going to just be a bit harder to work with if you have more flour than hydration. Okay, so you can see now my dough is becoming super smooth and it's bouncy, so it's bouncing back up, but it is still super bumpy. So I'm gonna keep kneading until my dough is completely smooth, no bumps at all, and super bouncy. And that's what tells me that that gluten has been activated. So even just that little time, it's already starting to become less bumpy and just more smooth. All right, so it is feeling so nice and smooth. From here, we are going to cover this. We don't want any air to get at our dough because we want to keep that hydration inside, and also we don't want to get a skin on the outer surface of our dough. So we are just going to use a bowl. You can use plastic wrap, Ziploc, whatever, as long as no air gets to that dough. So we're resting this for 30 minutes at room temperature so it stays nice and warm. It's going to be much easier to roll out, especially if you're rolling it out by hand. So I will see you in 30. So I am going to show you how to use a manual pasta machine. This is a super old school pasta machine done completely manually. This is what I grew up making pasta with. First, we have just the base. So this is just the flattener. And then usually you have the attachment, which is the spaghetti and fettuccine. So this basically just is added on with this little piece right here. And this is the full setup. You've got your hand crank. So you are gonna put it in to the base when you want to flatten your pasta, and then you're gonna put it in to each one of the cutters when you wanna make whichever pasta you're making. So fettuccine goes here and spaghetti goes here. So one at a time. And then you're gonna have this piece, which is super important. So this is what is going to keep your pasta machine sturdy, so that when you do crank it, it doesn't move all over the place. So we're just going to attach it to my table so that it just stays in place. The hand crank goes into the hole and you just crank it like this. So the levels are on here are 1 through 9. So 1 is the widest, 9 is the thinnest. So always start on 1 and move up at least once through each level. So you don't want to shock your pasta by starting at level 3 or 6 or whatever. You need to go a little at a time, because if you put your pasta in too quickly in a thinner setting, then it could break your pasta and crush it or add air bubbles in it, which will then affect the final product. So little at a time, we're going slowly. So we're gonna take our pasta dough and just by hand flatten it. This has been resting for probably over an hour, so it's nice and soft, pliable, stretchy, so you can see, so you can kind of like form it into the shape you want to. So I'm gonna do like more on the rectangle, oval side. So this is our pasta dough. So again, our crank is in our flattener, and we're just going to go through number one, and I'm gonna just let my dough rest right here while it falls out. So I'm going to add flour through each level because we do not want it to stick to our flattener, and we also don't want to stick to our cutters when we go to cut it. All right, so we're gonna move to level 2, and we're just going to, again, let it lay so that we can catch it. It's our piece. And it really doesn't need flour at this point, but if it was summertime and it was super humid, then I would be really flouring each level that I go through. So it's really just dependent on your environment. Okay, level 3. So you can see my dough is super floured even going through that. So I'm not gonna add any additional flour. If your dough sheet was super yellow or didn't have all that flour, then I would add it. All right, level 4. And so right here, it's kind of going to the side, so I'm just gonna help it out and push it towards the center. Okay. Again, still nice and floured. So I'm gonna just keep moving up the levels. So now I'm on 5, we're gonna go through 6. You can tell it's getting nice and long. This is through level 5. And we're gonna go through level 6, and then I'm gonna cut it in half. You could cut it at any point in time if it gets too long for you, because there's more of an opportunity for it to overlap and then stick together and go through your roller with double pasta sheet. All right, so we're gonna move to level 6, our last one. And again, there's plenty of flour on here, so I'm not gonna add more flour, but if it's sticky at all, you're gonna add flour to both sides. All right, so here is our finished pasta sheet. Nice and flat, nice and thin. So at this point it's long, so I'm gonna cut it in half. You can also cut it into thirds or quarters, but I'm gonna cut it in half so that one half can be cut as fettuccine and one half can be cut as spaghetti. So at this point, I'm gonna move the hand crank to my cutter. So first we're gonna do fettuccine, and then we'll do spaghetti. So before I cut them, we are going to flour our sheets. And this is especially important when cutting spaghetti because it's so thin, you don't want it to stick together. But when you cut any of them, even if you're hand cutting, you wanna make sure your sheets are nice and floured so that once you're done cutting them, they don't stick to each other. Okay, so now for the fettuccine. And fettuccine means little ribbons. So we're just gonna cut these little ribbons. We're just gonna catch it. Okay, and once cut, we're just gonna gently lay our pasta on a cutting board, flat sheet, or like sheet pan. Okay, so now we're gonna cut spaghetti. We are going to move our crank to the spaghetti cutter. And same thing. Just gonna let it fall. And you can see the spaghetti, like I said, is super thin. So it's more like angel hair than spaghetti. So just go like that. Okay, so this is ready to cook immediately in salted boiling water for 2 to 5 or more minutes. And it's just dependent on how thin or thick you rolled your sheet. Spaghetti is gonna cook faster than the fettuccine. So it's gonna be like 1 to 2 minutes for the spaghetti, 3 to 4 minutes for the fettuccine at this thickness. You can store it by hanging to dry, and that is good for months. You can just stick it in a airtight container in a dry, cool place, and it will be good for months. You can also freeze it, which is what I usually do, just a bit easier. So stick it directly in your freezer like this, let it harden for like 30 minutes to an hour, and then transfer it to a freezer bag for up to a few weeks. I like to eat it within a week so that it's the freshest possible, but it will be good for weeks, even months. So here's what to do if your pasta is sticky at all. So you can tell this is like a little bit sticky. Even if it's way sticky, this is gonna work. So we're going to just add some flour, and we're gonna just gently toss it in our flour. And this is so that each strand gets coated with flour. And they'll be nice and not stick together. All right, so even if you did that, you can just stick this right into the freezer like this, and then you add it to your boiling salted water from frozen. Don't thaw, it will just stick if you do that, and it will cook up in about 1 or 2 more minutes than if it was fresh. So thank you guys so much for joining this class, and don't forget to follow Buona Pasta Club on any platform that you're on. Cheers.